Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to the Regional Transportation Committee of the Denver Regional Council of Governments for Tuesday, October 18th. also going to participate as members of the steering committee.
So to answer your question, Chair Flynn, I think this can be a framework for some guidance about how we evaluate proposals and promote the formation of new TMAs. There are definitely areas around the region that are emerging areas, developing areas where they would benefit from the creation of a TMA. I think about the East I-70 corridor where there's a lot of development planned and happening in Adams and Arapahoe counties and in Aurora, and the linkage here between this work and CDOT's new Policy Directive 1601 for new and changes for TDM plans associated with those interchange projects will become a really important connection between this work, that work, and those developing and emerging areas. And we would certainly expect that this can provide a tool and a framework for the evaluation and creation of not just to address CDOT's issues, but to, as part of the planning and growth of those areas that are emerging.
Thank you. One last question from me. On the schedule, I don't see any point where this comes to the DRCOG board. Is this a plan that requires review and a vote by the board members?
Yes, I believe it does, and if that's not on the schedule, we definitely need to put that on the schedule. That was taken from Urban Trans Project Management Team, and so they had just put that chart together in terms of the planning tasks, but yes, definitely will be reviewed.
Okay, thank you. I assumed it went off the end of the paper because I looked all the way at the bottom, and the schedule goes off the bottom. So we're over here. Thank you, Commissioner Stanton.
Thanks, Chair Flynn, and a really nice brief, Kaylee. Thank you and welcome. I'm a little concerned about the additional stakeholders. One of them is the Chamber of Commerce, and if you look at who's on your stakeholder steering committee, it tends to be environmental justice, education, community, public, but you don't have that private thing. And I would recommend that you have a representative from the business community on the actual stakeholder steering committee. And the reason for this is we're moving into, you're trying to especially get businesses to contribute to ride sharing, transit, et cetera, and this might help you overall. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will just point out that a couple of our TMA partners are also intertwined with chambers of commerce, such as Downtown Denver Partnership and Denver South. They have those EDs with them. So they are, those TMAs that are sitting on our steering committee also are chambers of commerce, but thank you for your feedback.
Reason also is for someone who isn't into this, they may see if you could put something with business in that steering committee, even if it's also represents, as you said, that shows that there's a balance because that's what's driving the economy is business, of course.
Thank you. Director Williams.
Am I on? Yeah. No echo? I just want to point out, I serve on the board of one of the TMAs, and in my experience, all of the TMAs are very much connected with their local business community. And if you have the members of the ED or whatever, the TMA, I think you'll get really good feedback on what's going on in their area from them, from the business community. That's just been my experience.
My point is, looking at the steering committee makeup, if I'm a legislator or if I'm someone who doesn't know all of this, it would be helpful to say and it includes business and chamber of commerce people. Otherwise, people go, oh, this is really tilted over towards the environmental justice, et cetera.
Good point. Thanks, Don.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, Kaylee, thank you very much. Look forward to following this process.
Great, thank you.
For the next year and a half. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, number 5, DRCOG Equity Analysis Project Update with Matthew Helfand. Welcome.
Good morning, Matthew Helfand, Senior Transportation Planner here at DRCOG, and we also have Byron Schultz from our GIS team to assist with this presentation. Where do I have to do it on here? Because I did click. All right. Some things that we're going to be going over are equity requirements for DRCOG, environmental justice, an internal environmental justice and equity project, environmental justice thresholds analysis, and have any discussion and questions. So for DRCOG, as a recipient of federal funds, we're required to take into account all of these acts, so Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Executive Order on Environmental Justice, ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Executive Order on Limited English Proficiency, Older Americans Act of 1965, and also recently passed the Colorado Senate Bill 21260. So we're required by federal law to show concentrations of environmental justice populations. Those are communities of color and low-income communities. And so this is the status quo of how we show it currently by just showing it at or above regional average for each. But this results in almost half of the DRCOG map being shaded in. And so we've been looking for more meaningful ways to show this, to depict this, so that we can have better analysis. And so we use that equity analysis for our Title VI plan, for our regional transportation plan, and for our TIP, amongst other activities. And so here is just how we've shown in the past how we've done that analysis and used it to depict where the areas are and where the projects are in, for example, the RTP or the TIP. And so project objectives for this internal project are creating ways to make equity analysis more meaningful, continuing to evolve our stakeholder and public engagement, enhancing equity analysis as part of future project funding and investment decisions, and tying improved equity approaches to other applicable DRCOG planning processes and products. And so here's the timeline for our internal project. As you can see, we're in October of 2022, and we're looking to complete our initial work in August of 2023. So there's the schedule for you. And I'm going to turn over the floor to Byron Schultz now. Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew. Before we continue, I'm just going to close this box here to make it a little more visible. There we go. So, as Matthew mentioned, we have our current environmental justice zones data set, and there are some flaws with it that he already pointed out. And we're in this phase of the project where we're just reassessing that data set, looking for ways to make improvements and address these limitations. So, again, we're designating too much of the area really as an environmental justice zone, rendering it a little bit less meaningful. So we're looking to identify fewer zones with greater concentrations, and we want to do that in a way that avoids just setting some arbitrary threshold of saying, okay, 30% or more people of color, therefore it's an EJ zone. That seems like an arbitrary number. So how can we do it in a meaningful way that gets to a little bit less of the region as shaded in? And we want to do this kind of cognizant of the fact that marginalized communities still exist outside of these designated areas. That data is kind of one approach to determining this. And so we have done a review of some alternatives, and we have settled on one that we want to propose as a new way to define these environmental justice zones, and that is by using standard deviation. And standard deviation is simply a measure of how far a value is from the mean, and in this case, the mean is the regional average. So we're just looking at how far these concentration values are from the regional average with the standard deviation. And so, for example, if you have these two block groups in Denver, this top block group, they're 31.7% people with low income, while the regional average is 21.4%. So that 31.7% value is 0.6 standard deviations above the regional average. Whereas the census block below, block group below, you can see there are almost 56% people with low income. So how does that stack up? When you look at it from a standard deviation perspective, it's almost 2 standard deviations above the regional average. And so what we're proposing to do, kind of cutting through the math, is to set a threshold at 1 standard deviation. And so in this example, that bottom block group would get designated an EJ zone or environmental justice zone, and the top one would not, because we're looking for things that are above 1 standard deviation. All right, so let's see here. So the next thing I want to show will be how this looks when you actually map it out for a region. And so let me just pull up that map here, and let me get the mouse over. So this map I'm showing you here is also in your materials, so you'll see a link to it when you go through the PowerPoint that Matthew and I have. And this is just simply showing, when you go to the data tab, how this looks. So we have in this map, this layer right here. So this is using the old method of just looking at the regional average and having either of those 2 components be above the regional average. And you can see much of the region being colored in here. Some areas are just very contiguously designated. But if you look at this, this would be what the new proposed definition would result in. And so you can see we're being a little more selective with that 1 standard deviation threshold. And you can obviously take time yourself if you're interested in particular areas to see how this compares. So if you wanted to kind of compare up here in Thornton, you can simply take the layers on and off to kind of see where there's overlap and where there's new areas or areas that are no longer being designated. And so back to the PowerPoint, just to kind of wrap up, we have a couple next steps. So we intend this to kind of be the beginning of an ongoing conversation or ongoing updates that will come to you and other guiding DRCOG entities to make sure that we're on the right track. collect any feedback for this recommended change. Another next step is to pilot something called an equity index, which means in this environmental justice data, we're looking at really just people with low income and people of color. An equity index allows you to pull in more indicators potentially of marginalization, so older adults, individuals with disabilities, for example. And then also a benefits burdens analysis. So we do understand that data is one part of the equation, but if we're going to look at the way we're distributing the way our programs are working, a benefits burdens analysis can also ask questions about how those projects are going to impact the communities that they're occurring in. And then, of course, as Matthew mentioned, we want to update in the future, not the current slate of TIP projects, but in the future for TIP and RTP, we want to look at how our equity analysis is done and including this new and revised environmental justice data set. So with that, that concludes our presentation, and we will take any questions or comments you may have.
Thank you. Director Williams? Oh, did you have something, Ron? I'll let Ron add to this first.
Director Williams wouldn't mind. Really appreciate the presentation. This is really important work that DRCOG is undertaking. For a long time, we've always considered equity. We've always done an environmental justice analysis under federal law and regulation of our planning and our plan processes and our products. We've also taken into account equity considerations when evaluating project submittals for Transportation Improvement Plan or program funding through our TIP. This effort is really at, can we do our environmental justice analysis better than sort of how we've done it before, and we believe we can. And part of this is thinking about different geographies other than traffic analysis zones in our model, which can be very, very big and not very meaningful. And can we improve the way and enhance the way that we consider equity in our decision-making at the forefront? So improve how we analyze the end product of our planning processes and also improve the way that we consider equity in the planning processes in the first place. So that's why this work is so important. It relates to Senate Bill 260 and the disproportionately impacted communities work. It relates to our federal requirements under federal law for environmental justice, and just relates to improving our planning processes for the region. So I really want to thank Matthew and Byron and the whole team at DRCOG that's been spending a lot of time working on this. We're not done, but we thought it was really important to provide an update to the committee. Thank you for indulging me. So I just wanted to frame that a little bit for the RTC.
That's good. It'll help further the discussion. Director Williams?
I'm just wondering if you guys are considering, when you talk about zero vehicle households, are you looking at that when it's an economic factor or when it's a choice? Because the choice numbers are going to grow, we hope.
Director Williams, I was talking specifically about environmental justice, but as part of the broader equity package and in this internal project, we're looking at several more populations that are underrepresented typically, and that have mobility challenges.
It? Thank you. Director Shaw. Thank you.
Thank you. So I guess to build on Director Williams's question, so will that be an overlay so that we'll see where those income factors or communities of color intersect with the zero vehicle households?
Thank you for that question. We are still exploring exactly how we want to revise the equity analysis, but we do envision that we can create some maps that do show an overlay of here's where there may be a lot of folks with zero cars or with low income, et cetera, overlaid with projects. That is one very likely possibility. And we potentially could explore something, again, where there's interactive maps if we do create such a data set, putting it on our regional data catalog so that jurisdictions and whoever's interested can do their own overlays.
Thank you. Director White.
Oh, thanks. This is fascinating work, and we're struggling at CDOT with many of the same issues. So to that end, I would love to connect you with our new head of our environmental justice and equity branch, as we're struggling with these same issues and sort of compare notes. My specific question, though, is when you were looking at the standard deviation approach, were you starting out with, I think of the 3 factors for disproportionately impacted communities, housing, poverty, and people of color. Are those the 3 you're starting with? And are you looking at an and or an or approach?
We actually are looking at, in this case, just 2, the percent people with low income and percent people of color to meet those federal requirements.
Okay.
Specific for our programs. We have looked at the disproportionately impacted communities definition as well, but this standard deviation approach, we're only talking about those 2 at this point, and we've been following the strict definition for a disproportionately impacted community where I think it's 40% for each. So
okay,
kind of a separate data set than this one.
And are you looking at whether a community is both or just one?
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to answer that first. But it is an or definition.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Could you clarify a little more for me, because I'm building on the questions from Director Shaw and Director White. The map that we saw that is more limited, is that an overlay of lower household income and households of color at the same time, not separately?
That's correct.
Just make sure I
An
understand.
overlay of and or.
And or.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it could be low income and communities of color, or just one of each.
Okay, because I wouldn't want to see low income being a proxy for communities of color as well. But then what I'd really like to understand is, can you tell us how we envision we will use this data when we analyze projects? In other words, would a highway investment or a multimodal investment are these census blocks or tracts? They're blocks, right? Blocks. Okay, so they're smaller. How will that impact our analysis? Would that investment be good, or would it be bad? Or would it have a negative impact? Would it have a positive impact? You know, just thinking large, I'm looking at Central 70. Did that have a good impact? Did it have a bad impact? I'm hearing both in the community, right? So how will we use this data?
So project by project, they're all complex, and a transit project could be a positive impact, but if the construction for that project hurts business in a low-income community, then that could be a negative impact. And the same thing with highway projects. They could be good because they provide more access for low-income and communities of color to get places, because the overwhelming amount of people in our region still take a car as much as we would love for them to take transit. And so it's still providing a benefit there. So it's complex, and each project's different. These are just ways to look at the projects, and then when we're making the decisions, they inform the decisions, but it's not saying, well, this project's in this zone and it's a good project, so it's good. It's a lot more complex than that.
I suppose it could be both at the same time. A light rail or a commuter rail station that promotes TOD, and that TOD turns out to be luxury housing, could end up displacing lower income households from that zone. On the other hand, depending on the jurisdiction's land use policies or housing policies, such as what we just adopted in Denver, it could help embed more affordable housing, depending on what the requirements are under the new, whatever was the House bill that passed that allows us to require income restricted housing. I forget the House bill number. So it could be both at the same time, basically?
Absolutely. It's project by project. And one thing also to bring up is this is a regional perspective, right, but ultimately every project sponsor is going to have to do their more detailed work under the National Environmental Planning Act, NEPA. And so they're going to do much more detailed work at the project level on top of this more regional scale perspective.
Thank you. When Director Mikulas, go ahead.
Just kind of as an example for Region 1, how we would use some of this data. So this mapping, once you kind of turn the layer off and you get a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the areas adjacent to a corridor, right from the planning stage, we would look at, oh, well, what kind of public engagement would we need to do if we're going through an area that has, you know, higher communities of color, disproportionately impacted communities. So we would start right from the beginning on how are we going to reach out to them, the style of communication, if we need language interpretation, and then as we kind of work through the project and it works through the life cycle, you know, what are the impacts? Are they disproportionate to that particular community? Do we need to do particular mitigation measures to kind of offset some of the impacts? Although we may also have some benefits from an overall project perspective, but kind of what are some of those deeper dive mitigation things? So it really helps us from the beginning of the project kind of shape how and when and what type of engagement we have with the community. It's really helpful. Thank you.
Certainly. Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I have one more. What is the time frame for implementing this, and to what tip cycle might it apply?
So it won't apply in the current tip.
Right.
If you're
well, because we don't have it in place yet, right?
If I go back a couple slides, see if it. Show you the. So as you can see, much of the project, this internal project, is scheduled to be completed in August, but then sometime in 2023 and 24, we'll be doing regional transportation plan equity analysis, and so it's going to inform future plans that we're not working on yet.
Right. Although it could affect projects that are being planned right now that are not on the constrained list, right?
It certainly could, because if a project's in the RTP, in the fiscally constrained plan, but then it comes time for the tip, then the analysis is still there for that that project.
Thank you. Anything else? Seeing none, thank you very much, Matthew. U.S. DOT discretionary grant programs. Mr. Papsdorf is going to do this.
I'll actually move.
Got it.
Morning, Ron Papsdorf, Transportation Planning and Operations Director. I need to get a little closer. Thank you. Okay. Did want to give just a quick update and have an opportunity for a little bit of discussion around all of the federal discretionary grant programs. So, been a while since we talked about this, but the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, IIJA, also known as BIL or Bill, has lots of different names. I think the administration has landed on calling it the bill or BIL. But it was the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was signed into law towards the end of last year. It generally increased available funding for transportation and other infrastructure investments through formula programs that flow from the federal government to and in some cases through CDOT, and some of that increased the amount of money that we have currently available to allocate through our current TIP process that we're currently involved in now. But it also created a slew of new competitive grant programs that are discretionary grant programs where project sponsors apply to the U.S. DOT or the Federal Highway Administration or the Federal Transit Administration to compete nationally under specific grant programs to fund specific projects and programs. And there are increased funding for some of the programs that existed prior to the bill, like RAISE or infra, but it also created new discretionary grant programs. And we've been sharing that information out to all of our partners and our local government partners to inform them of these new opportunities. And we've been sharing specific information as it's come out through what's called Notice of Funding Opportunity, or NOFOs, which is the mechanism that the federal government uses to announce the opportunity to apply for funding under a specific grant program. So in the packet, we did provide links to some important documents that are available that the U.S. Department of Transportation is maintaining for the various grant programs and when they are issuing notices of funding opportunity. There are a couple that are out now. One of the things that DRCOG staff has been doing is requesting information from our partners when they anticipate submitting for a particular grant, submitting a particular grant application, basically just for transparency, not for approval from DRCOG, but so that all of the partners within the DRCOG area and DRCOG are aware when one of our partners is applying for or intends to apply for one of these grant programs. One, so we can work with them to ensure consistency with our regional transportation plan or our transportation improvement program, because those can be really important criteria at the federal level about whether the project can actually proceed and be implemented. And two, to identify opportunities to collaborate among different partners. There might be a jurisdiction that's thinking about a project and wants to submit a project under one of these grant programs. Might be really useful for the neighboring jurisdiction to be aware of that and maybe think about maybe there's an opportunity to collaborate, cooperate, pursue that jointly, or just get support for that project application. So that's kind of what we've been doing through this process. This is the first year under the bill. It's been coming pretty fast and furious under these grant programs and the NOFOs. CDOT had a really great success under the infra, was it infra or RAID? Infra for the Floyd Hill improvements on I-70, the mega program, yes. $100 million competitive grant award into Colorado to assist in the funding of the improvements to Floyd Hill on I-70 out in the mountain corridor. So these programs do bring real dollars into the state. I think it's in our mutual interest to make sure that we maximize the amount of that money that flows into Colorado, because if it doesn't come here, it's going to another state, and it's going to other priority projects around the country. So it's really important for us to keep those lines of communication open, to help each other when we have identified good competitive priorities under these grant programs, pursue them together as much as possible. I think what we've seen from most of the notices of funding opportunity and this administration is a priority on collaboration and cooperation and partnership for a lot of these grant programs. So I just wanted to lay that out. We do have specific NOFOs out right now. One is the Strengthening Mobility and Revolutionizing Transportation, or SMART. I believe that every grant program starts with the acronym that the bill writers want, and then they come up with a name to match the acronym. At any rate, so that's out now. That's mainly on advanced technology, on transportation operations. So think of advanced signal technology, connected and autonomous vehicle sort of technology, things that are piloting programs that have not been implemented very widely, where we could learn from those applications of those advanced technologies and then spread them to other places where they would make sense. So that's open now. There have been a number of region-wide conversations going on between our regional transportation operations group as well as CDOT's operations groups and a number of local jurisdictions as well. The Advanced Transportation Technologies and Innovation, ATTAIN, Reconnecting Communities pilot program, I think just closed earlier this month. So a lot of these are coming. I would direct you to the links that we included in the agenda packet again, to the U.S. Department of Transportation website where they've got all these programs. Just encourage you with your partners, your local jurisdictions. If you have any questions, reach out to us. We can provide lots of information. Happy to work with anyone that's interested or thinks that they might have a good project to match one of these grant programs. And then the last point I want to make is this is not a one and done. Under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, these programs are authorized for 5 years. So almost all of these programs will have an annual call for projects. We'll learn a lot from this first year, this first cycle, in terms of what types of projects sort of pique the interest of the administration and get funded, and we can learn from that to kind of shape what projects we pursue in future years when under those NOFOs when they're released. With that, I'm happy to take any questions that anyone has.
Thank you, Ron. Do we have a way here at DRCOG to capture those of our partners, our members who might be, to fill in this chart with, well, here's who's applying under this one, here's who's applied for that, and here's how we can assist them, or just to make sure it's coordinated, or just to see whether it's coordinated, not that we can make sure of that.
Thank you, Chair Flynn. Yes, so that request form that we included in your packet today is what we've been sending out to our local government members and other partners when a NOFO comes out, requesting them to give us some basic information about a project that they might consider or are submitting for under one of the grant programs. So this is the second request form we've done. We did the first one when RAISE and INFRA came out, and what we do is when we collect those, we present everything that we get from any of those partners that might be submitting an application to the Transportation Advisory Committee. So that's how we share that out to the region and let all of the partners know what applications might be coming forward, and that's that opportunity to identify potential partnership or collaboration opportunities.
So our members will know, or will have a way to know who's doing what.
That's correct.
So we can all work together on it. Thank you. Any other questions? Dr. Shaw.
Thank you. I did have a question about some of these, and if there is like a minimum amount that could be requested, and even if the amount is larger, if the federal dollars might be converted to less reporting requirements through partnership with CDOT.
Yes, thank you, Director Shaw. Every one of these programs has its own criteria and framework or parameters around them. So they will have a minimum request amount, a maximum federal share amount, a minimum non-federal match amount, which usually is 20%, but not always in all cases. And so that's why the table that we provided and the summary information that we provided in the packet is really important, because every one of those programs has its own specific eligibility, specific eligible applicants, which in most cases, but not all cases, includes cities and counties and local jurisdictions. In some cases, but not all cases, includes metropolitan planning organizations like DRCOG. In almost all cases, but not all cases, state departments of transportation. So every program sort of has these differences. What kind of projects are eligible to be funded under the program? What are the criteria that they'll be evaluated against? And then who's eligible to apply? And what are the funding restrictions on those grant programs? Everyone is very different. I would start with the basic table that just has the basic program description for each one. That'll give you the start about, oh, that one really is not applicable to our priority project, but this one is. I should dive in a little bit deeper on that one and evaluate the specific criteria, the parameters around that grant program. And again, we're happy to have any conversation with any local government. If you have a project in mind that's a priority in your community, we can help you sort of wade through a lot of this information and say, yeah, that might be suitable for this grant program, maybe not this
one. Thank you. Mr. Coleman?
Yeah, in addition to the numerous amount of grants that are included in this new bill, one of the other big distinctions is that it basically is a direct recipient grant program. So the local community, say Lone Tree, submits and wins a grant, CDOT is no longer involved in the process. They were purposely pulled out of this process. So these grants flow directly from the federal government to the recipient agency. And let me just say, to caution you, there are a lot of requirements. I'm going to tell you, even the most sophisticated local governments don't know because they've relied on CDOT to take them and guide them through the process. Here's what you need to submit by when. And I will tell you that the timelines on these grants, if you don't know what you're doing, you will lose the grant money. So it's really, I would caution local governments to be cautious, seek advice of experts, because if you don't follow the rules, you lose the money. The other thing I would say, and you were talking about a little bit of money to a big pot, other thing to caution is once you bring federal money into a big project, even a little bit, it federalizes the whole project if you don't know what you're doing.
Gee, thanks.
I appreciate Jeff throwing a little cold water out there.
Well, I'm just being cautious because I'm doing that right now for a client that did know the federal process, almost about to lose $14 million.
Director Welch.
Thank you, Chair Flynn. Ron, would there be any benefit for some of these programs of knowing in advance what the other MPOs agencies may be pursuing so we know when Colorado is competing against itself for some of these federal programs?
Yeah, it may be, Brian, a little harder to keep track of all of that, but I think the point is well taken and would behoove us to sort of think about how we might be able to do a little bit of that coordination among the regions. I think a lot of the programs, there's good opportunity to sort of be competitive in different parts of the state without directly competing with each other. But there are some of the really big grant programs where it probably is important to be a little thoughtful about not throwing too much out there. And it often becomes a little bit of a gaming out what the best strategy is. Do you throw out several sort of project applications in the hopes that one of them sticks, one of them will sort of garner the attention and get support at the federal level? Or do you say, this is our one and only priority under this grant program, it's so important to us, this is the only one we're submitting, and hope that implies and kind of gets that federal support at the risk of that one not really resonating with the folks back in DC that are reviewing the grant application? It's always a little bit of a gaming out sort of what the right approach is. I think a number of our local government members have some of those same discussions when they're considering what projects to submit through our transportation improvement program to compete at the tip for funding through DRCOG.
Yeah, I know our congressional delegation often appreciates getting a heads up when multiple projects that they're simultaneously being asked to pitch on the Hill. It's just good for everybody to be aware of what's coming.
Thank you. Ron, are we being, or should we be, or can we be proactively working with our partners, our members, to identify opportunities to apply for some of these grants for projects that are on either the regional or the sub-regional wait list?
Thank you, Chair Flynn. It's a really important question. I think the Transportation Improvement Program is always a really good place to start because you've already intended to, or the project has already been federalized. So that addresses one of Mr. Coleman's issues, right? The second is it's already been prioritized at the regional level. So the region has already said this is a priority project. And two, if some work has already been done and it's in the tip, it may have advanced to the point where it's much more ready to go than, say, a project that's, yes, in the regional transportation plan, but maybe in the second 10-year staging period in the regional transportation plan. Not as much project development work has been done, so it might be harder to get from kind of start to finish in the time frame of the grant program. So I think the tip is always a really good place to start, but it's not the only place to start because not every grant program is for construction. There are a number of these sort of grant programs that are more in the planning or the project development sort of realm of infrastructure, and so can be a good place to look to get some funding for projects that maybe are a little bit further out or issues that are a little further out to help shape what might then become future applications for actual construction funding. But I thank you for that. The TIP is an excellent place to start, and we're happy again to have conversations with partners about what aligning sort of local priorities with regional priorities and with these federal grant programs.
Certainly. And I don't mean to imply that our members aren't already, that their staffs aren't already doing that, but if we could collaborate with them just to make sure that that's happening and we're working together, anytime we can get grant money into projects that are on a wait list for our regular funding, that helps us out with the other projects on the wait list.
Very much so. And there, you know, there can be a dynamic where, you know, regional planning process is really important, and the agreements that you all reach collectively through those planning decisions around this table and the DRCOG board table that set the regional priorities. I think what we try to discourage is any partner agency maybe using a discretionary grant program to short circuit that planning process and go and get a federal competitive grant for a project that hasn't already been prioritized at the regional level and sort of jumping the queue or jumping the line, if you will, through, you know, around the priorities that have already been set by you.
Certainly. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Ron. Really appreciate that. Next item is member comment and other matters. Before we go to the CDOT report, I just do want to note that although we don't have any action items at RTC this morning, we do actually have a quorum. So I just want to note that for the record. CDOT report.
All right, good morning. So this is Transportation Commission Week. It's always a really busy week at CDOT. And one of the things that we've got going on tomorrow, we are doing a bus tour along the I-25 corridor. We'll be driving through Segment 2, US 36, and then all the way up through Region 4. We'll be making several stops. And we're doing that with our transportation commissioners and then mayors or their designees along the corridor. Really the purpose of that tour is to just kind of familiarize all of our commissioners with what's going on I-25. We've got some segments under construction, some that were recently funded through the 10-year plan. So just taking some time to kind of look at that corridor as a whole. So we'll be doing that tomorrow afternoon. Really exciting also tomorrow afternoon is the groundbreaking for Floyd Hill. As Ron mentioned, we got $100 million of MEGA, and we have some of our kind of early action projects, a roundabout and a wildlife crossing, that are going to break ground as part of the larger project. So really exciting day. We plan to have, I think the governor is attending as well. So hopefully Mother Nature will cooperate and give us some sunshine, because you never know on Floyd Hill. And other things going on with CDOT, we're really getting heavy into our snow operations preparation. We don't have snow flying down here, but we've already had snow flying up at the Eisenhower Tunnel. So although it feels balmy and sunshiny periodically here, we are heading straight into winter. So a lot of time getting our troops, our professional maintainers trained, getting new CDL licensees comfortable with plow equipment and operations and all of those things. It's a really big lift, and we spend quite a bit of time doing that this time of year. We already talked a little bit about strategic grant planning, but at least we in Region 1, and I think the other regions as well, are working hard to kind of figure out and strategize which grants to pursue, which projects to put forward, and in which year would we be the most ready. We've had some really great success over the last year of applications, so we're planning to continue that. And then just in general, last month our 10-year plan was approved, and so now we're in the trenches getting work going and getting dollars put to the projects and making the plan come to life. So I think that's all I have. Rebecca, anything to add?
Thank you. Commissioner Stanton?
Yep, thank you. That I-25 tour that we're going on is very important because we're going to have commissioners on there. We're going to have 8 or 9 local elected representatives. We're going to have a commissioner from Weld County, and that brings up the looking forward to the growth of this state. We're at 5.9 million today. We'll be somewhere around 8.5 million, probably in 2050. Most of that growth is projected to be coming down from Tacona, Weld County, areas in the north, and we are all connected. We can say that DRCOG ends at Longmont or something like that, but this state is connected. I-25 is our arterial. Last Friday, a truck got stuck under a brand new bridge, which is going to cost us money, and stopped I-25 in both directions. That shows how vulnerable we are. And so this bus trip, I think, will be a really good opportunity for commissioners to talk. Commissioner Holguin will be talking about Central 70 and the area in Denver, and then Commissioner Stewart, and then Commissioner Brackey in the north. So we should get a lot of feedback. And I also want to say, on behalf of the commission, we all really, really appreciate the work that Rebecca White and her team and RTT Director Michael Bust have done in the last year, 18 months. This has been a huge lift to get everything from greenhouse gas rule to 10-year plan, and thank you, DRCOG, for the work that you have all done on that. Also, I'd like to ask if Commissioner Holguin or Commissioner Stewart on virtual would like to add anything.
Thank you. Where is the bus tour beginning, on the south end?
Going to start at CDOT headquarters.
Oh, okay.
And we're going to be picking up a few people along the way, but basically we'll be going north on I-25, like to the Thornton stop, and we'll go to various mobility hubs and sites of construction that are going on. So it's going to be a constant, and then we'll lunch somewhere up in the north and then turn around and get back. So it's a real opportunity to have dialogue.
Thank you. Any other questions for CDOT?
White.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, CDOT. Next up, Brian, you have the RTD report.
Thank you, Chair Flynn. Just 3 or 4 quick things. We've got 2 more zero fare days for voter participation coming up. Friday, the 28th, is National Vote Early Day, and of course, General Election Day is Tuesday, the 8th. Both of those days will be zero fare days. The Denver Union Station bus concourse restrooms reopened yesterday after quite a considerable delay. We have the 3rd community and customer meeting for the system-wide fare study and equity analysis this Thursday, if you'd like to participate at 6 p.m. And finally, the sub-regional service councils that are a new addition to our outreach and engagement efforts. Those initial meetings are going to take place in November. And the first item, one of the first agenda items, will be an introduction to our new Call for Projects partnership program.
Thank you. Could I, just to clarify, you said the free fare days are Friday, October 28th, and Election Day, which is November 8th, I think? Okay. Thank you.
Correct.
Good information.
Question.
Question.
The August free fare days, what was the result of the numbers? How much of a bump did you get up in RTD system?
We will have a comprehensive report coming out next month that is going to include a number of analytics, including ridership. We're doing a statistically significant survey of our passengers and customers, where it'll include an outreach to our operators. So that will all be coming out soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brian, could you maybe dwell on that a little more? Will ridership be broken down by individual routes as well to see which ones were taken advantage of? My grammar teacher would kill me for having said that. Were used most often or most heavily?
Yes. Yes. Sorry. You know, the RTD ridership, as you may be familiar, is seasonal in nature. So one of the things you have to do is you have to consider the fact that August is different than July, is different than September, and these all need to be equalized. So you're not just comparing August to last year or to June or September. We'll do that, but we also will be looking at individual routes to get a better sense. We'll break it out between commuter rail, light rail, fixed route bus, paratransit, and all of our services, as well as the overall. The one challenge we have, and Rebecca has talked about this before, what we're really trying to achieve with a program like this is to move people from their cars to buses. And I don't want to tell you in advance that we have a lot of analytics to understand who shifted, but we'll do our best and work with CDOT to compare some numbers with VMT and fuel sales just to try and get a proxy for what impact zero fare had on vehicle miles traveled and that gigantic contribution to greenhouse gas emissions. There's also a benefit that we know, and we've asked a lot of questions about, well, did this introduce you to transit and RTD in a manner that you're going to continue with us? And you'll get information on that as well, Chair Flynn.
Thank you. One more, if I can put you on the spot again. Will the analysis be granular enough that we would be able to see which stops had the most boardings and alightings?
I'm not sure that that would be part of the presentation materials, Chair Flynn, but we can definitely provide that information because we do have that.
But that'd be very useful to see which communities are using it.
Certainly.
Not just total ridership on a route from end to end, but where are they boarding and where are they going is useful. All that data will make my head explode, I know that. All right.
Chair?
Yes, Director.
If I could, I would love a presentation on this work, and I also noticed that Downtown Denver Partnership did their own survey. I don't know if perhaps the chair could entertain that at a future meeting, but it'd be a really interesting to see the full range of what was coming in. I'm excited to find out how that worked.
Certainly, and I'd also like to see that at the board.
Yeah.
Director Williams.
I'm just wondering how many people in the room here heard from their family or neighbors that they rode based on the fare free. Yeah, that's what we heard as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Sorry, Director Olguin, Commissioner Olguin.
So I guess this might be outside of the scope of it, but I'm also wondering if there's an effort to understand why people didn't. I talked to several people and they were like, oh, it was free? And I was like, yes, that was such a great opportunity. And so I think I want to make sure that we don't miss an opportunity to better understand what those barriers were instead of they just chose not to. From one individual, he was like, I just don't know how to ride the bus. I just simply don't know. And I was like, I wish I would have realized that. I would have gotten you on a Sunday and just, all it takes is just bringing somebody with you, right? It's fairly easy. And so I'm wondering if there's also an opportunity for the days that are coming up to widely promote it so that people can be like, this is, if you're nervous, just come and join any bus stop and people will guide you through it. You know.
Excellent. That's a tall order from everyone here. We're expecting a lot of data.
There's a lot of information on the RTD website. I think it's still all up there about how to ride and how to use the various maps. And of course, there's apps. And so I personally heard a lot from people who said, oh, I don't want to use the app. And so the solution to that, and I still work with older adults and people with disabilities a lot, was I tell people just go down there, get on, ride 6 blocks, see what you think. And what we did hear from our drivers was that they were really thrilled that people who got on, as opposed to fumbling for their fare or trying to figure out what was going on, got on and said good morning. And the can I say this? And the union reported that the drivers were just like, wow, this is so cool. And they weren't necessarily in favor of it.
Oh, thank you. Brian, does the data, I hesitate to bring this up, but does the data have any potential to change the course of the system optimization plan and your whole reimagining RTD? Do we expect we might find out something that will inform either one way or another the direction where that's going?
Well, Chair Flynn, That's a fascinating question.
You're new, you know, we just got to break you in right away, you know? I know it's a small data set, and, you know, Reimagine RTD, I was part of that. It went on for 2.5 years. So I don't imagine it can, you know, change the, you know, turn the ship around, or that it might show that it should. But I'm just wondering how that could be useful in the reimagining process.
The answer is yes. The extent to which we discern and understand and investigate what we learned during August could influence an upcoming run board. That's when we do our service change.
Yes.
And that would be compared to the conclusions that the board approved for the system optimization plan for sure. I'm glad you brought that up, Chair Flynn, because it would behoove us to include that in future understanding of the system optimization plan, because it's our commitment to continue to update that as appropriate.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions? Director Shaw.
Thank you. I wanted to echo Director Holguin's comment about showing people how to use the system. A few years ago, pre-COVID, one of the other council members and I took our Living and Aging Well in Lone Tree group for a tour of the light rail. We showed them how to board. We gave them the option of joining us at the end of line station, which gives them a little bit more time to board. We got off at Union Station, got ice cream. Some brave people went out to the airport on the A line. And, you know, even though there's a lot that you can read, there's something to that experience. And maybe if there is some sort of coordination that might be done between either the libraries or the recreation facilities with a guide sanctioned by RTD, people might sign up and in fact their fare might be included in the enrollment fee or whatever.
Director Williams.
Yeah, so, you hearing me? Yeah? So Dr. Mack, the Denver Regional Mobility and Access Council, does do travel training, and it's designed exactly the way you're talking about, and there's no charge for it. So anybody who's interested can look online. If you just type in, there's no doctor. It's not DRCOG and it's not Dr. Mack, but DRMAC for the Denver Regional Mobility and Access Council. You find travel training there.
Thank you. One thing for Commissioner Holguin and Director Shaw that I have found when I use light rail, I don't stress or worry at all because I know where it's going. I know it'll get there generally on time, and I know if I miss one, if I see one pulling out, there'll be another one in 15 minutes, which is the advantage to the high-frequency bus transit concept. It's where we get into the local bus network that I sometimes wonder if I miss a connection, am I going to have to wait 60 minutes or 30 minutes? And will that bus, because it's coming all the way from Aurora and I'm on the southwest side, is it running behind schedule or not? So high frequency and reliability and predictability lessens the need to worry about how do I ride? Because you know, if I go to Englewood Station, it'll get me down to the convention center X number of minutes and I'll be on time. So that's a factor also. Your operators are key also. I had a ride on the 21 once where I had to go from DU to the Evans Station to get back downtown. And that driver, it was Valentine's Day week, and he had taped a picture of him and his wife to the bar by the fare box. And he just talked about how much he loved his wife. And every time we came to a stop, he announced every attraction or every restaurant or coffee shop or bus connection at that stop. And it was just wonderful. And I know that we can't expect all of our drivers to do that, but it was one of the best bus rides I ever had. Thank you. Seeing no other questions on this except from Mr. Papsdorf.
Sorry, not a question for Brian if they're done. I just wanted to do a couple announcements.
Yeah, other matters from members. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, sorry. Director Shaw had me at ice cream, for one. I just wanted to say thank you all for being here this morning. I know we just had informational items. I hope you found them useful. They're kind of foundational work for us, and we wanted to take advantage of today's meeting to get these in front of you, because the November meeting is going to be chock full of stuff. And we didn't have time, we wouldn't have been able to accommodate these important topics and all the topics at your November meeting if we had canceled today. So I do appreciate everyone being here. I appreciate your attention on these matters. I hope you found them useful, and the work that we're doing. At next month's meeting, just a little bit of a preview, we will be bringing forward the funding recommendation, the funding allocation recommendation for call 3 of the Transportation Improvement Program. That's the second regional share application process that closed last week. Our staff is furiously reviewing all of those applications against the scoring criteria. We're taking staff out to do site visits to all of the applications this afternoon and tomorrow morning to actually see all of the sites. So if you want to go out to your project site and put a sign out there, fund this one. Now you have until about 1 o'clock this afternoon to do. Don't do that. I'm teasing. So we will have that. We will also be briefing you on some of the work that we're doing in evaluating potential corridor planning and community-based transportation planning efforts that are in our Unified Planning Work Program. So DRCOG-led corridor planning work. So we'll update you on the status of that work, as well as our regional planning framework update that's been ongoing, and our congestion management process. So we do that at the annual report on congestion management. We learn a lot of information every time we do that. So we'll be as well as a couple of other items. So I hope that gave you a flavor for all of the things that are coming up in November and why we felt it was important to get some in front of you today.
Are you telling us not to park at the 2-hour meter in November?
That might be prudent.
Thank you. At first, I thought you were saying the staff was furious. Then you said furiously working, but my brain cut you off at furious. Any other matters from members? Seeing none, a reminder that the DRCOG board meeting tomorrow is canceled, and our next meeting for RTC is November 15. Hope to see you all then. If there is no other business, and I'll see you going once, twice, 3 times, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here. If you park down